Hey everyone, I wanted to give you an update and just go over the small group questions. But first, I want to start something where I'm actively building into you guys, and each week we have a leadership focus. So this week we're going to be talking about a group discussion and how to make group discussions just a little bit better. This is something that I learned from my mom, who was a second grade teacher for a long time, and now she's in speech therapy, but she worked as a teacher for a long time. And Sarah, you'll understand this, but we're going to be talking about the awkward silence. You guys, I'm sure, have all experienced this in your groups, that you ask a question and no one answers for a while, and it seems like forever, and it seems so awkward. And so I wanted to give some clarity, some advice when you get into those moments. What I've learned is that it sometimes takes students time to process a question, and it's okay to sit through those awkward silences. What I'll do is I will count to 30. That's a good time to allow a student to process things. And once you get to 30, try rephrasing the question if still no one answers. But it forces people who maybe know the question to speak up and answer and realize that you're not going to bail them out. And it also gives time for students who need a second to process the information. And so that's just a tip that I found that's useful. It's helpful for me to know whether or not the question is resonating with them, because if they're not answering it in 30 seconds, then I'll give them a new or a different way to think about that question, a different way to approach it, maybe just even rephrasing it. All right, so let's get into it. This week we are talking, we're going to be going over Matthew 2:13 through 32. The bottom line for this week is God never promises more than he can deliver. When God promises something, it's always within the scope of what he can do, and he always comes through with his promise. The idea is that the goal of small groups is that the students would come to understand how we should live given God's faithfulness. God's faithfulness is so amazing, and is something that we can lean on as Christians. And so how do we live with God's faithfulness, and how should that affect our life? So question number one is, have you ever had someone promise more than they could deliver? Explain how that felt. And there's really no right answer for this, but really the question is getting at, have you ever been let down by someone who has said that they could do something and has let you down? What does that feel like? How how does that make you see them in the future? How does that build trust? Or going through those things, I think is showing the inverse of what God does. The next is reading 1 Corinthians 10:13. That is the verse that says, and I'll paraphrase, when God brings us into a situation that is tough for us, he always provides a way out. God is faithful, and that he'll never give us more than we can handle. The idea is, how does our bottom line from the message that night, how does that help us understand this verse? And I think what we need to do is understand that when God says that he is faithful and that he will always give us a way out when we are in trials, when we are in when we are tempted, we need to understand that he is promising something that he will deliver on, and that we need to trust in him for that. If we feel like we are in a situation that is too much, really God is saying that, no, you can handle this because I've said that this won't be too much for you. Question number 3, what advantage as Christians do we have because we believe God is faithful? How does God's faithfulness help shape how we should live? The question I'm getting at is, as Christians, even compare and contrast what the Christian life looks like because we know God is faithful, and what a secular life, or what someone who doesn't believe that there is a God or doesn't believe in God, what does that look like? We know that God is going to come back. We know that there's a hope for eternity for us. We know that there are all of God's promises are yes and amen, because God is faithful, and we know those things. And because we know that, we can live a certain way that is different from the world. We don't have to be afraid of death. We don't have to be afraid of we don't have to be afraid of the things that we're unsure about, because we know God is in control, and that He is faithful, and what He said will come true. And so, again, there's not necessarily a right answer for this, but asking them, how would God's faithfulness actually change the way we live? If someone didn't believe this, what would be different about us versus them? And I think that's maybe another good way to rephrase that question. I'm really excited for Wednesday. I'm excited to see you guys, and I'm excited to see what God does. So I will see you then.